Well, greetings, everyone. And on behalf of the American Sustainable Business Network and our collaborators today, the U.S. Department of the Interior, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Intertribal Buffalo Council, Native Americans in Philanthropy, and the World Wildlife Fund, we are thrilled to welcome you to our webinar today, Native-Led Bison Restoration and Economy, the opportunity to engage and support. My name is David Levine, and I'm the co-founder and president of the American Sustainable Business Network. And our network is building a business movement, partnering with business organizations, companies, and investors to advocate for and to advance solutions and policies that support a just and sustainable economy. Our mission is to inform, connect, and mobilize business leaders and investors to transform the public and private sectors, working on issues including climate and energy, regenerative agriculture, clean water, conservation, inclusive and just economy, and democracy. Over 1.5 years ago, we were honored to sign a public-private partnership agreement with Secretary Haaland and the U.S. Department of Interior. Our commitment at ASBN in this partnership is to leverage our business and investor community to support tribally led economic development. We started this initiative focused on bison, as you see from our session today, and are now working on mobilizing businesses to partner with us to support the bison work, as well as a wider range of native-led economic opportunities and uptake for native-produced products. One of our related initiatives is our Growing Grass project. The overarching goal of our 5-year USDA Partnership for Climate-Smart Commodities, the Growing Grass Project, is to realize the full value and production of regeneratively grazed beef and buffalo focused on hides and byproducts. Over half of the total project funding that we receive of $35 million will go to farmers and ranchers with priority for and support for native communities that are regeneratively raising beef, cattle, and buffalo. Our focus as we get the work rolling is to build authentic partnerships with native communities to identify needs and to provide resources to support both buffalo restoration efforts and native-led beef and buffalo production systems that allow for more community as well as market value for the byproducts to be retained. Today, you'll be hearing from a number of key leaders that we are partnering with and who are moving crucial initiatives in support of the buffalo restoration. As you will hear, buffalo restoration can be understood in the spiritual, cultural, community, as well as the economic context. These efforts, all of these efforts, need your support. We are working together because we understand that it will take a broad collective effort to build a new pathway forward. So as you hear the presentations today, please think about what you can do to support, and in particular, how you can help move resources for native-led buffalo restoration. So the format, we'll have our presenters speak, and then we'll address questions and comments later on. And so we invite you to place any of your questions or comments in the Q&A function. So now it is my great pleasure to turn to Wizapan Garriott, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs for the United States Department of the Interior. Wizapan?
Yes, thank you. Really great to be on today with friends and colleagues, folks that I have extreme admiration for, and for the opportunity to talk a little bit today about our buffalo bison restoration efforts. My name is Wizipa Garriott. I'm a citizen of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, located in what is now South Central South Dakota. And I have the privilege of serving as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs at the U.S. Department of the Interior. The bison, and as our people call them, Tlatlanka, restoration is not only something that I get to work on and very happy to do so. It's a privilege, but it also is the fulfillment of kind of a lifelong passion that I've been able to be able to continue that work here. And so I'll walk through some of the efforts that Interior is taking, and then hint at some of the partnerships that you'll likely hear more about from some of the other presenters. As folks many know, the Department of Interior manages a number of bison herds, the most famous of which would be Yellowstone, but we have bison herds at other locations, at other national parks and in other federal lands. These buffalo are oftentimes the surplus. We work with ITBC to distribute those surplus to tribes, which then in turn help to seed and provide the basis for many of the tribal herds that are in existence today. And there's been lots of ongoing work over the last several decades in that area. But one of the things is that we felt that was not enough. And so Secretary Holland, who also shares a deep passion for bison restoration, issued a secretarial order. And what a secretarial order does is it's a broad directive to the entire department. And this secretarial order established several things. One, it codified and made formal the intra-agency Bison Management Council, which is a council that that's made up of various parts of Interior to manage our buffalo. What it did, though, was that in addition to officially chartering this entity, is that it provided a seat for a tribal leader to sit on there, and that tribal leader would have a voting power. And it also codified participation from Intertribal Bison Council and Native American Fish and Wildlife Society. It also, I think the other thing that the order established was that it prioritized bison restoration through Native-led efforts and acknowledged that Native peoples are essentially the best bison stewards in the world, and that our efforts to restore bison would be focused on working with tribes and tribal peoples to do so. At the same time, we also felt that it was important to not just have some policies in place and words on paper, but that we needed to throw money behind it, that we needed to invest. And so we committed $25 million towards bison restoration. A lot of that work has been and takes place on federal lands, but some of that funding has also gone to tribes, and there will be more, and then also supporting ITBC with some of their incredible efforts and work that they're doing. Additionally, related, we have also formed a public-private partnership with Native Americans and Philanthropy, ASBN, and many others to really further a lot of our work and to bring philanthropy in the private sector together with tribes to enhance a lot of our investments and to help target and to help bring more resources towards these efforts. And so you'll hear a little bit more about those public-private partnership efforts from our other speakers. And then finally, I think it's important to mention that another parallel effort is our ecosystem restoration effort, which is a national effort to revitalize our ecosystems. And there are 9 areas of focus. So for example, one of them is Alaska, where we're focusing on coast stewardship with the tribes in Alaska around salmon restoration. The other area of one of the other kind of big pillars is what we call our grasslands initiative, where we're looking at the central grasslands as an area, an ecosystem where we need to put a lot more time, energy, and effort to restore that landscape. And the primary focus for that effort in grasslands restoration is supporting tribes and tribal and buffalo restoration. We know that buffalo is a keystone species that has helped to shape, whether through a symbiotic relationship, the grasslands in North America, that the best way to restore grasslands, by far, unequivocally, is to just put buffalo on the land and let them do their job, because that's what the science tells us. and really the science is just confirming what Native people have been saying for hundreds of years, over the since colonization, really, that we need to be protecting wildlife. We need to be protecting bison and working in a more symbiotic relationship with them. So I could keep going on and on. It's a subject I get really excited about and could keep talking, but there are folks that we also want to hear from. And so again, David, it's amazing to see you. Really looking forward to hearing more from our colleagues. And thank you for participating and being a part of this work. And we have a lot more work to do, but this is an amazing start. Thanks.
Well, thank you for today, but thank you for your leadership there. I know you bit off a lot in joining the Department of Interior and helping to lead so much that's been long overdue. So thank you for your work and the like. And thanks again. Safe travels here as you go on and the like. And next, it's our pleasure to turn it to Heather Dawn Thompson, the Director of the Office of Tribal Relations for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Heather, thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, David. We are just so thrilled about this partnership and just really excited about the large attendance that you have today to discuss this topic that is so important to so many of us. As David said, I'm Heather Dawn Thompson. I'm a citizen of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe in South Dakota. My family and I live in South Dakota, but I too, like my partner Weezy, are an appointee right now in Washington, D.C. I am the Secretary's Director of the Office of Tribal Relations. And we have had a joint tribal buffalo initiative with our partners at the Department of Interior since the beginning of this administration, which we have now expanded to the teammates that you see on this call with the Intertribal Buffalo Council, with NAP, with World Wildlife Fund, with ASBN, and formally entered into MOUs and public-private partnerships to leverage, as Weezy shared, the federal investments that are being made in this space with our partners in the nonprofit and in the for-profit sectors. As we all know, the federal government can only do so much. We can put as many resources as we have available into tribal buffalo, but in the end, we will fall short. And so we recognize this early on, that we were really not going to be able to move this ship unless we had really significant partners. And so we're very grateful for this partnership that you now see being presented in front of you. All incredibly brilliant organizations now headed in the same direction together. So what I wanted to share with you is some of the things that USDA is doing so that can help you think about maybe potential areas of investment. So for those of you that are not familiar with USDA, we are quite a large organization, and we are different than the Department of Interior in this space. Where our partners at Department of Interior, as you heard from Weezy, really lean into the tribal and the conservation space, we predominantly work with working lands. And the 5 categories that USDA really has are food. We run all of the federal nutrition programs, including school lunches and the commodities, food boxes that go to Indian country. Forests, so that's where our federal land management and our co-stewardship and our treaty rights come into play. Farming and ranching, of course, which we people are most familiar with the Department of Agriculture. Economic development, we are the 7th largest bank in the United States if you put all of our economic development and investment portfolios together. And finally, research. We are one of the largest agricultural, food, and farming research entities in the United States, investing in that space. And so when you have such a broad and variety of topics available and programs available, you can really approach tribal buffalo from many different angles. And so I don't know if my teammates can put it in the Q&A. Oh, great, Terius, thank you. So Terius has put in the chat a link to our recent Buffalo summary of all of the work that we're doing in here. So I encourage you to go to the Q&A and click on that link so you can kind of follow along as I'm just going to list out the 10 major subject areas that we have begun investing in. So you get a feel for that. And then I'm just going to highlight 3 or 4 of them. So number 1 is procurement. We do $3 billion worth of purchasing of food in the United States. So where we put our money and what we purchase is incredibly important. So we are leaning into tribal buffalo in the procurement space. Processing. You've heard this from tribes probably that that tribes believe that buffalo are different than cattle and should be treated differently in the processing process. 3, inspection. We are in charge of food inspection, safety inspection for many animals in the United States. Nutrition and cooking. We have a whole series of nutrition and cooking videos on buffalo that we have produced. Producer resources. How do we support our tribal producers? One thing that I wanted to flag under this category is that you'll see in here, we actually have created a handbook for cattle ranchers, tribal cattle ranchers that are interested in transitioning to buffalo. 6, animal health. We have APHIS, the entity that is responsible for a significant portion of our animal health. We have done a lot of research in cattle, in animal health, and less so in buffalo. And so we are changing that direction to include and incorporate buffalo as well. Insurance, emergency coverage. We do coverage for animals that are lost due to natural disasters, etc. And historically, buffalo have not been included in those programs. They are now. Conservation. We're working with Department of Interior very closely on this. Federal buffalo herds. Again, as Weezy pointed out, we're working with Department of Interior to get these federal herd excess animals out to Indian country. And then 10, co-stewardship. As my partner Weezy pointed out, we have this responsibility to enter into co-stewardship agreements with tribes. And so with those 10 categories, there's just a handful of things that I want to highlight, and then I'll turn it back over to David. So in several of these areas, eligibility was one of the first questions. Cattle are clearly eligible for all of our programs in which that would be appropriate, but it was less clear in the space of buffalo. One of them I just shared with you, which is our livestock indemnity program when animals pass due to natural disasters. We've made sure that buffalo are also eligible, just like cattle, for that now. Another important one is we do a lot of investment in fencing for our ranchers. And as you can imagine, buffalo need a different fence than cattle do. And so it was very clear that we could invest in cattle fencing, less clear that we can invest in the additional fence that was needed for buffalo. We're working on changing that as well. In the processing, I wanted to highlight 2 things for you, especially as business people in this space. 1, tribes have been very clear that they want to take the animal down in the field in order to honor that animal where he's born and living, and also to not stress the animal and put stress hormones in his body to be transported to a bricks and mortar facility. So we have invested with the Intertribal Buffalo Council into a mobile meat processing trailer in order to facilitate that in Indian country. The other thing in meat processing that we did, which I think, and I'll end here, which is a really good opportunity in the business community, is that most of our dollars in USDA have been invested in meat processing for what are called amenable species, or species that are non-wild, that we have responsibility for inspections: cattle, pigs, sheep, chicken, and less so in the wild species like buffalo, reindeer, etc. And so we created this year a $50 million grant exclusively for indigenous animals processing. And you can imagine that a very large portion of those applications were for buffalo in Indian country. And that program, we thought $50 million was a lot of money. We had $300 million worth of applications. So we have a $250 million unmet need in the meat processing, protein processing space here, that supports all of the conservation, all of the tribal buffalo, all of the goals that we're talking about here, right? It's one thing to conserve the animal, but most of the tribes also distribute their meat to their community members to make sure that they are being fed as well. And so without those resources, they're not able to manage the herds in the healthy way that they would like to. So that is one of the unmet needs. I just wanted to flag, David, for your teammates as we have this conversation, and I will pause here and turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much again for sharing that. And folks, take note again, the opportunities to support and to engage. And it's the action that we're interested in. You know, we are well past just needing to talk about this. And, you know, and clearly one of the key organizations that's been at this work for bison buffalo restoration for quite some time is the Intertribal Buffalo Council. So it's our pleasure to introduce you to Troy Heiner, the Executive Director of the Intertribal Buffalo Council. Troy, thank you.
Thank you, David. Momitakapi, Chantewashtea Nampe Chuzapilo, El Troy Heiner Imanchapilo. What I said was, hello, relatives. With a good heart, I shake your hand. My name is Troy Heiner. I'm a Sichangu Lakota from the Rosebud Reservation in South Central South Dakota and the Executive Director of Intertribal Buffalo Council, located in Rapid City, South Dakota. I'd just like to give you a brief history of ITBC and what our efforts have been over the last 32 years. ITBC was formed in 1992 by a small number of tribes, knowing that there needed to be a voice for buffalo, both at the federal level and then lately more in the business community or in a partnership philanthropy community. What started out with a small number of tribes has now grown to 83 tribes in 21 states. So we go from New York to Alaska and from North Dakota to New Mexico. Collectively, those tribes manage over 25,000 buffalo on their lands. Collectively, that makes us one of the largest buffalo managers in the nation. Here at ITBC, we run many different programs, and with 83 tribes, you can imagine that we have various herd sizes. We have some herds that manage 5 animals for ceremonial or cultural purposes. We have herds that range in up to 2,000 that have actively engaged in the economic side of buffalo restoration. But one thing that is common across those tribes is that importance for that cultural and spiritual connection to this animal. As I've traveled the country, I've learned more about how each tribe's connection relates to their creation stories. It goes back to how they used animals for ceremony, to be able to feed their people. And for the most part, that's where tribes want to be as they bring buffalo back to their lands. They've lost that connection for a long time. And ITBC and USDA and NAP and Department of Interior, WWF and TNC, we've all been banding together and trying to fix that problem. Wheezy alluded to it earlier about our surplus program that we manage. Each year, the federal government has surplus buffalo and contacts ITBC to redistribute those animals to tribes all over the country. Last year, with DOI resources and our partnership with the Nature Conservancy, we moved over 1,500 buffalo to new homes instead of to slaughter. One quick story, the Peoria tribe of Oklahoma, and I love telling this story. The Peoria tribe of Oklahoma was removed from Illinois in 1818, and they were first moved to Kansas and then to Missouri, and they were kind of bounced around there. And they were finally settled in the northeast corner of Oklahoma. Well, just in January, because of the efforts of Department of Interior and the transfer program that's at Yellowstone, we were able to take that tribe 14 Yellowstone buffalo. Now, that's the first time that tribe has had a connection with buffalo of their own for over 200 years. So you can imagine how important and how emotional that was. And for me, it's always, oftentimes I'm the one driving those trucks. And I see the elders in that community who have had no connection with buffalo. And when we unload and those buffalo come running out, and I see the kids that are there to witness that, knowing that they will always have buffalo in their community from here on out. That's a huge emotional win for all Native peoples. Besides our surplus program, we also provide a herd development grant program. So we take our base funding from the Department of Interior, which, you know, they're doing the best they can. We understand that the needs that tribes have, Interior doesn't have that big a checkbook. But we take what we can and we get that out to tribes. And that helps provide some of the money for fencing, some of the money for their herd manager. I got a picture just the other day from Rosebud that purchased a new and safer chute to be able to handle their animals. And those are all purchased through herd development grant dollars. We also do herd health. Heather Dawn alluded to herd health issues. We try to answer those questions to make sure that those buffalo that are located on tribal lands are as healthy and as good a buffalo as they can possibly be. You have to remember that the tribes view buffalo not as a commodity, but as a relative, and they treat them as such. Some of the other things that we do here at ITBC is we work with tribes who are trying to establish new holding facilities for Yellowstone buffalo. We know that because of the work at USDA, we're able to get those buffalo out quicker, which are very important at the tribal level because they're the last of the old ones. When you think about the estimated 30 to 60 million buffalo that once roamed this continent, and then how that was dwindled to less than 1,000 in a very short period of time, there was a pocket of Yellowstone buffalo that remained connected to the original buffalo. And so our tribes obviously are very interested in receiving those buffalo, not only for their genetic purity, but just that connection to the same buffalo that provided for our ancestors. And thanks to the work of the USDA and Department of Interior, we've been able to increase the number of buffalo that go into the transfer program, as well as get them out quicker and safely through our testing protocols. And now we're at the point where we need tribes to be able to house those animals to finish that testing protocol and then be redistributed out to tribes. The Wind River Reservation, the Eastern Shoshone tribe, is a prime example of a tribe that is really trying to take the next steps in buffalo restoration, not only on their lands, but to help other tribes as well. We also work on with partnerships. The Nature Conservancy, WWF, NAP, we've all been working together to create an opportunity for tribes to be able to put more of their lands into buffalo habitat, as well as increase the amount of buffalo that they can run. That's no small feat. We know that buffalo are big, dangerous, and they can go wherever they want to go. So we need to have adequate fencing, adequate pastures, where we can allow buffalo to be buffalo and use that land the best way, the way the Creator intended them to do. So where does the business community fit into this? You know, we understand that tribes are not the only place to access buffalo. There are many private individuals that have access to buffalo. But what has happened generally is there's been an economic depression on tribal lands. And with that economic depression and the lack of buffalo, there's also been a cultural depression. So it's our hope that as we start to return buffalo back to tribes, that our culture and our revitalization of who we are as Native people, we help bring that along. And with that, then there's opportunity. There's opportunity for business to come in and be a partner in tribally led buffalo restoration. The first question I always ask a tribe when they want to bring buffalo back to their lands is, what is your goal? Some tribes just want to have that cultural connection. Some tribes are looking to feed their people. Some tribes are obviously in the economics and are able to sell meat or other products. And so whatever that tribe's goal is, and whatever direction that they're going, that's where the business community can come in and help. And if we can start with the buffalo, I think you'll find other avenues where the business community would be welcome on tribal lands and with tribal people. So I'll stand by for any questions, but I cannot thank Department of Interior, the USDA, NAP, WWF, and David and you folks for allowing us this opportunity to introduce ourselves and maybe learn a little more about what tribal buffalo restoration looks like on the ground. So Pilamiapalo.
Well, thank you. And incredible body of work that you've been leading, and often without resources and the like. And clearly there's a need for much more resources to help you move what so many of the communities you serve need. So we will keep working together to push that forward. So thank you, Troy. So now it's my pleasure to turn to Martha K. Arnold, the Vice President, Grasslands and Northern Great Plains Ecoregion for the World Wildlife Fund. Martha, thanks for joining today.
Thanks, David, and it's great to be here. I'm Martha Kaufman. I'm with the World Wildlife Fund, and our mission is to conserve nature and reduce the most pressing threats to the diversity of life on Earth. We've been around for over 60 years, and we work in 100 different countries. We collaborate with people around the world to develop and deliver innovative solutions that meet the needs of both people and nature. So here I lead the Northern Great Plains program and our work on grasslands in the United States. And WWF has been working with Native nations to restore bison to tribal lands for over a decade. We support each nation's goals and vision, as Troy described. They're all unique for their program. And we act when invited, and we help in any way that they need our help where it overlaps with our areas of expertise and ability. We assist on habitat acquisition, planning, infrastructure development, capacity building, community engagement, ecological monitoring, fundraising, communications, letting the tribes tell their story in their voice, and helping give them that megaphone where we can, and making connections to a broader network of support, like what David and ASBN is doing here today. We're part of this partnership that Troy mentioned. It was announced in December by USDA during the White House Tribal Nations Summit. And the partnership is intended to be Native-led. I obviously work for a non-Native organization, and we really see our role as supporting and bringing the capacities that we have to bear in this whole effort to for Native-led bison restoration. We are working with, again, all the groups on this call, plus the Nature Conservancy. And the goal is to really move in the same direction and have much more impact by doing so. The vision we share is to respect the indigenous values of buffalo restoration and support the establishment, stabilization, and expansion of each unique sovereign tribal buffalo program for cultural, spiritual, ecological, and economic revitalization. And of course, the focus of this panel is part of this economic revitalization piece. When we kicked off this partnership last year, ITBC held a herd manager meeting in September to inform and shape what we do from the people on the ground who manage and all of these herds. And they identified 7 indigenous values to drive Native-led buffalo restoration over the next 10 years. Number 4 was economic development. The return of the tribal buffalo economy allows for self-sustaining, revenue-generating communities and Native-owned businesses to address some of that economic need that Troy just described. And at WWF, we recognize that the long-term sustainability of our conservation efforts wherever we work has to be led locally and has to be beneficial to the communities who live there. And one example of where we're doing this right now is my colleagues in WWF Bolivia and Peru are working with local people to protect the Amazon by supporting sustainable Brazil nut harvesting practices that builds upon their traditional collection of nuts, not just for livelihoods, but also to support their way of life for generations. And I think it's really interesting because Brazil nuts actually need a very diverse forest canopy to survive, because pollinators come from all these different trees. And it's a $150 million business in Bolivia. So it's an opportunity to connect conservation with an economic opportunity. And restoring the buffalo economy will look however the nations decide it should. We're here to support that. And wonder, you know, with this group, I think this is a tremendous opportunity to help be a part of thinking how we can be a resource to help develop revenue and job opportunities. How might there be support to build Native-owned businesses and develop value-added facilities? How can you all in ASBN be a partner in helping to figure this out and support this really exciting effort focused on restoration and revitalization? We're really excited at WWF to be a part of this movement, and it'll take many, many more partners and entities to achieve this vision. So we look forward to growing this movement and working with many of you in the coming years on innovative solutions to restore bison, grow the tribal buffalo economy, and support the cultural, spiritual, ecological, and economic revitalization that comes with it. So I will stop there, David, and turn it back to you.
Well, thank you for that and for your work as a part of this. And next up is Joel Moffitt, the Director of Environmental and Special Projects at Native Americans in Philanthropy. Joel.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. And just want to express our appreciation from Native Americans in Philanthropy to be here with all of our wonderful partners supporting tribal restoration of buffalo. Tatsalaf Imimakalatiwama. Good afternoon, everyone. As David said, my name is Joel Moffitt. I'm a citizen of the Nez Perce tribe, and I serve as Director of Environmental Projects at Native Americans in Philanthropy. To begin this work, starting over 2.5 years ago, NAP took the initiative to really refocus our relationships with tribal nations and lifting up the sovereignty of the individual tribal governments and connecting them with philanthropy. And so our main goal at Native Americans in Philanthropy is to promote equitable and effective philanthropy in Native communities. And we definitely want to increase the funding and community engagement from the philanthropic sector. But we also want to transform and influence that sector as well, telling our story, just like Troy was talking about. And specific to the work of the buffalo restoration, you know, we're partners with all the folks on this webinar, as well as the Nature Conservancy, to really create a vehicle to take advantage of the unique moment in time that we're in right now. We have an incredible administration. You see our awesome partners, Heather, Don, and Wheezy. And we have Secretary Holland leading up Interior. We have an incredible administration right now, and incredible resources from Inflation Reduction Act and the bill and many more resources flowing into conservation work, restoration work, and specifically buffalo. And so we wanted to take full advantage of that opportunity and leverage philanthropic dollars to ensure that the tribes take full advantage of these federal grant programs, that we can maximize the benefit and increase the number of initiatives and projects on the ground to accomplish all the individual goals that have been talked about today, understanding that every tribal nation is unique and they all have their individual priorities and goals. And we wanted this work from NAP to be truly tribally driven. So we have created a tribal climate and conservation funding collaborative. And that's guided by a tribal leader advisory committee that really sets the priorities and the needs for this work and guides our strategic connections and advancement and investment of the resources. And part of that, as I mentioned, is this leveraging private dollars, combining them with federal grants. And these public-private partnerships are a huge way that we're accomplishing these goals. And one I'd like to talk about just briefly is the America the Beautiful Challenge. You know, this could be utilized as a case study. We're learning a lot from our partnership with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, who administers this grant. But being a federally chartered foundation, they have the flexibility to combine those federal dollars with private dollars. And we've been partnering with NIFWIF for the last 2 years. This is our 3rd year, helping to amplify the opportunity to tribal nations for this grant program, helping to provide technical assistance. But the big thing that we're helping to assist getting these federal grants to tribes is helping with the burdensome cash match requirement that's on this grant program. And it's prevalent with a lot of other federal agencies and their grant programs. And this was a huge barrier to tribes even applying. And so we utilized our funding collaborative that we created at NAP, where we have 15 foundations who invested in that funding collaborative and to invest in tribally led conservation work. And so we utilized that funding pool to cover the entire non-federal cash match for the tribes who were awarded America the Beautiful grants in 2022 and in 2023. And in total, you know, we've leveraged $2.3 million from these private philanthropic organizations to open up over $75 million of federal grants under the America the Beautiful Challenge for tribal nations. And this, you know, we're going on to our 3rd year of the 3rd and final year of the America the Beautiful Challenge. And we went from 30% of the overall grants in the first year awarded to tribes to 40% last year. And we hope to increase that, even more this year. But we want to use that as an example, to look across other federal agencies, other federally chartered foundations, other grant programs, in order to, like I said, take advantage of this unique moment in time where we have tremendous federal resources flowing for these projects and proposals, and specifically to restore these lifeways that our tribal nations depend on. And when you go back to the root of these lifeways, we're talking about our relatives, these keystone species like buffalo. And so the partnership we have with USDA and Interior and Intertribal Buffalo Council, World Wildlife Fund, and the Nature Conservancy is super exciting, because we want to, as I said, learn from our public-private partnership examples like America the Beautiful Challenge, build upon that, connect our funder network that we've been developing here at Native Americans in Philanthropy, and really help provide a roadmap for not only the federal agencies but foundations and our tribes to how to incorporate more of these public-private partnership opportunities going forward. I'll stop it at there. I know we want to get to some Q&A, but we want to ensure that this work is truly tribally driven, even though we're working with foundations and non-native nonprofits who share some of these same goals. But we want to make sure that it's truly tribally driven and has our values at the core. So I appreciate the opportunity, David, and the whole team to be a part of this.
So thank you, Joel. And So you'll see some of the contacts up here for, further getting in touch with us. We will be following up with both the access to the webinar recording for many, and also then, a list of the opportunities to support and engage. And before I turn to the questions as well, I just want to give a shout out to Terius Harris, who is the Indigenous Businesses and Partnerships Coordinator for both the American Sustainable Business Network and our Businesses for Conservation and Climate Action initiative. So thank you, Terius, for all your hard work in making today such a success. So there are a number of questions here, and this one, Troy, was addressed to you, but others could weigh in as well. Are there examples of tribes who have partnered with outside investors to support their herds beyond ITBC's program development grants and programs?
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. Yes, there are examples, and one would be the Wolakota project that's on the Rosebud Reservation, that is part of Sichangu Co. and WWF. I think Martha could probably even add some to that. I mentioned Wind River earlier. I know they have worked with private philanthropy dollars or other funders to help in their efforts. Blackfeet. I think you would find most tribes would be interested in engaging if your organization or group was interested in helping achieve their goals for buffalo restoration. But there are examples out there.
Right.
And
Anyone else?
I would also add that the Tribal Buffalo Lifeways project, I mean, that's really designed to not only help ITBC and get real dollars out for their herd development grant funding, because we try to provide some equity so that all tribes have access to funding, but it also is going to provide an avenue for tribes who may have a specific project that needs to be funded. So this new group that we're forming, or this new partnership that we're forming, will be another spot to look to if you would like to join in this effort.
Right. And the key to keep re-emphasizing is that this is native led, and it's to take the guidance and understanding that this is not just a transaction at an economic level. This is something much deeper and needs that kind of different respect. So, and with that also, with respect, I also want to, shout out, to Estaquio Beltran and Kelly Dennis, who've been amazing in their support. They're over at the Department of Interior and the partnerships initiative there as well. And, just incredible partners along with the others at the Department of Interior. But thank you to Estaquia and Kelly for their work in this and their ongoing work to support these Native communities and the like. So another question, here's a good one. And it originally went to Heather, and I know, Heather, you started to answer this, is what would USDA and partners do with $250 to $500 million provided upfront by institutional investors? So Heather, I don't know if you want to add to that or just reemphasize what you had.
So
yeah.
As Troy said, that the Buffalo herd managers have gotten together several times to sort of advise us as partners in the space on what their funding priorities are. And so we hope and think that our funding priorities reflect that, and that they are Indigenous led. And so the first component of it is, we always say, and help tribes invest in their own lands, help them buy back their own lands. Those are the most difficult funds to find. Neither the federal government or philanthropy really have a good solution to providing flexible funds that are fast enough to compete on the open marketplace when different large land parcels become available that tribes are interested in, particularly for their buffalo herds and expansions. And then the question was specific to USDA, and our investments are obviously different than everybody else's investments. But from USDA's perspective, the two areas where we have seen the largest unmet need and that the tribal leaders have been really clear with us that they want additional funding is fencing. In order to transition largely from cattle fencing to buffalo fencing in order to fence in new lands that are acquired. And then two, flexible traditional meat processing. As I shared in the beginning, as Troy emphasized, most tribes do not want to bring their animals to a bricks and mortar that's, 6, 7, 8 hours away. And so providing safe processing dollars to create that mobile meat processing, we've been told by tribal leaders is incredibly important. And we have a $250 million shortfall in the interest there.
Great. Did anyone else want to weigh in on this? Okay, moving along. Then there's a question here. Is there a clear way the Inclusive Entrepreneurship Initiative and the Indigenous Futures Fund approach could support tribal bison efforts, in particular the unlocking of the state small business credit initiative, particularly through native CDFIs, community development financial institutions, for those who don't know, for bison-centered economies? Does that have potential? Joel, does that sync?
I'll take a crack at that, Dave. Yeah, we're exploring the needs of Indian country, and one of them that always keeps coming up, and I think Heather Dawn mentioned it, is access to capital, and whether it means to buy back land, to focus on business development, community development. There is a huge underinvestment in Indian communities in Indian country, and so we are looking at NAP at a new initiative where we're going to be partnering not only with foundations, but with financial institutions, and looking at potentially partnering with the folks that were mentioned in the question in order to help not only tribal businesses, but individual tribal entrepreneurs in order to get access to capital to accomplish their goals of restoring their communities.
Great. So we're 5 minutes out. There's a bunch more questions, and what I will suggest is that we will get to these questions. We will get to answer them, over time. Mariah, I just was going to go around. Is there anything that you wanted to add right now as well?
Yes, of course. Thank you, everybody. My name is Mariah Blackford Perry. I'm a policy partnership specialist with the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. Work really closely with Wheezy and Heather Dawn on bison restoration. One thing I wanted to mention as kind of the reason we're all here today is for this call to action to broaden tribal bison restoration into this space of economics and investment and partnerships. The initial call to action was made on March 6th at the White House Tribal Access to Capital Roundtable by Secretary Holland as a challenge to philanthropic sector to commit 10% of total giving to projects to Indian country. And that call invited banks, financial institutions to bring increased financing to tribal communities in any capacity. Today specifically, we're asking for the call to action to bring those commitments and those partnerships to Indian country, and pose the question to you all: what would that commitment to partner in Indian country, specifically with tribes on tribal bison restoration co-stewardship, look like for at least a 10% investment on tribal-led buffalo restoration and to relaunch the tribal buffalo economy? There's a real need for partnership. There's a real need for investment. And I think the forming of those partnerships can really play into each other and feed one another, So that's the only thing I have. And thanks for everybody for coming. Thank you, David.
So, yes. So just quickly, around to others, I know Wizzy had to go, but I'm wondering, Joel, do you have a last comment? And then we'll go to Martha, to Troy, and to Heather.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, reach out if anybody is interested in partnering with the tribes and tribal nonprofits that we help to advocate and support. This work is just getting started as far as this partnership. So I anticipate that it's going to be a sustained and long-term initiative. You know, these buffalo were decimated in the last century, and we're restoring them as well as the ecosystems they depend on and the indigenous communities that they support. So this work is going to be long standing, and we really want to welcome anybody who's interested in supporting this indigenous-led effort. It has multi-pronged benefits that we just outlaid, you know, not just conservation and ecosystem, but cultural, spiritual, and economic. So whoever wants to hop on board and help support, reach out.
Great, thank you. Martha Kaufman.
I just wanted to add to that previous question about the $250 million that this partnership we're building, you know, there's been a huge need identified, and ITBC, Troy, you can speak to it. The amount of money that they're able to get out right now is so small compared to the need out there. So there's huge opportunities for investments through ITBC, which is doing amazing work across 84 tribes at stabilizing these tribal buffalo herds. And we're also looking at an additional fund, probably held by NAP, that could help direct resources to programs that are coming up with additional larger project needs like land acquisition, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So great opportunities there, and look forward. I hope many of you on this call are able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Troy.
Well, thank you, David. And I guess to answer Martha's question, so each year when we do our herd development grant RFP, we receive about $17 million in requests, and we only have 1.3 to give out. So we have to, you know, make tough decisions and let tribes know that, you know, we're doing the best we can, but this is all we have. So I think anybody who is interested, echoing both Joel and Martha's comments, you know, anybody who is interested in this effort can reach out to any one of us, but also look at this new partnership that's being formed. That's going to be life-changing for tribes. I think in closing, we know we can't do this alone, and we need partners. We need people to buy into the vision and understand that tribes have a unique and important role in buffalo restoration, and any support that you can give a tribal government or a tribe to reestablish buffalo on their lands, that goes back to something that has the ability to change our communities from within through our own lens. So I appreciate even the thoughts. I appreciate the time you've spent joining us today, and look forward to hearing from you. Wopila.
Excellent. And Heather Dawn.
Hard to follow Troy, but just echoing my teammates, you know, tribes have been doing this work and on this path for a time immemorial. And what is different now is that they have all the rest of us cheering them on and behind them, and things are really starting to support all of the hard work that they have been doing. The federal government has leaned in very aggressively into changing all of the policies that are necessary to make sure that buffalo can flourish from a policy standpoint. But what we need now is financial partnership to invest in this vision and this goal. And so we are really excited about the potential opportunities here, David. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all, and thank everyone today for joining us. But as you hear, this was not about talking heads, although we had a lot of wonderful words shared. This is about the action that we can take. And there are a number of important pathways here. So please be in touch. We will be reaching out again because we are trying to move this initiative forward. And as been said over and over, it's going to take all of us working together in order to make this a reality. which is so direly needed. So thank you all, and to be continued.